This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Nam.
And I'm Jamal Dejani.
Jamal, we're in the thick of war. Ukraine is under siege right now. Close to 4 million refugees, Ukrainian refugees, now going into the 1 month of the war. We have multiple cities in Ukraine that are devastated, including Mariupol, which, the Russian military and Putin demanded that Zelensky and the Ukrainians basically give up sovereign territory in order to have a humanitarian corridor. The situation is grim. As we speak now, Kyiv is under attack. The suburbs and part of the intersection getting close to the border with Kyiv is being bombed as we speak. It's a grotesque, awful, catastrophic situation in Ukraine right now, Jamal. And I'm sad to say that my prediction is proving to be more accurate as time goes on. The West has completely miscalculated Putin and his drive. I don't see any change in sight for this onslaught for Ukraine or Ukrainians. Despite that, President Zelensky decided that he wanted to address the Israeli parliament and made this really kind of bizarre connection between the Holocaust and what's happening in Ukraine right now. We're going to talk about that. We're going to also talk about AIPAC and how it's endorsing a lot of Republican candidates who still believe in the big lie and still believe that the 2020 election was stolen. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then after our analysis, we're going to talk quite a bit we're going to do a great interview with Professor Rabab Abdulhadi and Professor Tomomi Kinukawa at San Francisco State University, talking about their grievances against SFSU. We have a lot to talk about, Jamal, but before we get to Professor Abdulhadi and Kinukawa, it's really grim in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, well, it is, and we have to talk about actually what we've been speaking about, how this war is being misread and misled in a way.
Absolutely.
Seeing different things, at least from our perspective. But you started by talking about the Russian offer to open two safe corridors out to Mariupol in exchange of the city's surrender. And basically, Ukraine firmly rejected this. So, you're going to see more onslaught, and Kyiv is under attack. We're going to be entering a second month.
That's correct.
Into this war. Many people thought that this was going to be an incursion, or as the Russians call it, a limited operation. That's how Putin was describing it initially, and now it's a full-fledged war. Then the exaggeration part, which we'll talk about it also, is I keep hearing Zelensky not only comparing the Russian invasion to Ukraine to the Holocaust, but he keeps talking about World War III. And I've been listening to a lot of military analysts who are saying, no way, this war has to be limited to the Ukrainian border. But it's almost like he has a death wish, not on Ukraine, but on the entire war to drag, in order for him, I think in his calculation or miscalculation, to stop the war is to drag NATO into it, to drag the United States into it, and even drag Israel into it. So he is almost wishing that we will have a World War III, Jess.
Jamal, I think your analysis is very interesting, and I have a kind of slight addition to your analysis. I believe that Zelensky has miscalculated, just like the United States has miscalculated. I have breaking news for President Zelensky. NATO is not going to come to his rescue. He's not going to get any additional warplanes. He may get more weapons, but this is going to be limited to Ukraine. And if that's the case, Jamal. Zelensky has to face a very painful reality that his country is going to be devastated. And the only way out is going to be, unfortunately, to succumb to the Russian and Putin demands of a full-scale occupation of Ukraine, the taking over of Mariupol, the taking over of the two separatist regions. And I believe, Jamal, the ultimate is also going to be to install a puppet leadership and to get rid of Zelensky out of Ukraine. And guess what? As we've been talking about, looks like Ukraine is going to align itself eventually in order to save itself more with Russia than it will with the West. And I think part of Zelensky's kind of bizarre calculation here, he may be preparing the West for his, because the only options are become a Russian satellite or self-destruct for yourself and for millions of Ukrainians. That's his decision point right now. So he's either gonna, be responsible for millions of more refugees and tens of thousands of more deaths, or he's going to succumb to the Russian demands, because NATO and the United States is not going to bail out Ukraine, Jamal, full stop.
Well, he doesn't seem to be succumbing to the Russian demands. I mean, he keeps
That we
waffling.
know.
One day he says the negotiations are going well and we are willing to listen to what Putin has to say, and then the other day he's defiant and he's reaching out to NATO, asking them to send him planes. He's asking Poland to bring him weapons. He's asking Israel to provide the Iron Dome, and then if you watch the news right here in the United States, not only, I mean, yes, we are seeing images of the death and the destruction, and I feel a lot of sympathy towards the Ukrainian population who have been that has been devastated basically, but at the same time, there is also a nagging, or I would say an encouragement, and saying kind of hang on there, like as if people want to watch them, and I sadly to say, as if journalists want to watch Ukrainian pay with the last drop of their blood to keep this war going, when you have military experts and other analysts who are saying, listen, actually the offer that Putin has submitted, because you've mentioned, I don't believe Putin want to hold on to the entire Ukraine. I think he wants Crimea to be part of Russia, and maybe
and Mariupol
yeah, and maybe the two separatist republics. Maybe he might be able to he might negotiate on this. Definitely not Crimea, and definitely not without the Ukraine and its president changing the constitution to say that they will never allow NATO, or they will never join NATO, and they will never allow foreign troops or bases on its soil. That offer, by the way, was made back in February 19th. So this war could have been stopped before it has started, Jess.
That's exactly right, Jamal. It could have been stopped. And I think part of the Zelensky delusion, and I'm sorry to say that I believe Zelensky is delusional. And I'm going to get to the media part in a second here, in believing that the West and NATO would come to his, and the United States would come to his rescue. They haven't, and they won't. And he's still holding on to that. And then unfortunately, you have this media complicity, this almost perverse attempt to continue to interview and speak to suffering Ukrainians, to hold on to that for whatever reason, ratings, whatever, and portraying this heroic struggle that the Ukrainian resistance is providing. I mean, that is such a painful narrative for me and you to watch, because the reality on the ground, again, according to military experts and based on what we're getting and what we're analyzing, is that the Russians are involved in a slow grind. They're going to go at it day by day, city by city. This is not going to be a quick takeover. They see that, and they are squeezing the life out of Ukraine. They're squeezing the life out of Kyiv. They're squeezing the life out of so much of Ukrainian life that you're going to have, there's 4 million refugees now. It could double for
more,
all we know.
More. You have internally displaced people. Half the population is pretty much internally displaced.
So I really believe that not only is there media complicity and Zelensky's delusion, maybe Zelensky's kind of saying, "Hey, it's the West's fault that we turned to the West to Russia and Putin." Maybe
Well,
he's setting it up.
NATO and the United States, let's face it, encouraged him, but then threw him under the bus.
100%. They threw him under
You
the
know,
bus. They threw all of Ukraine under the bus,
yes,
Jamal.
yes, because they realized the power of Russia, and we haven't seen actually the tip of the iceberg. Just recently, they started using what
Hypersonic
missiles.
missiles, right?
And you know, so initially they were saying, oh, they're not advancing. Of course, it's very hard to advance into cities without destroying an entire city and annihilating an entire population. And that's not the intention. I mean, of course, they've been ruthless because a lot of civilians have been hit. But imagine if you go through carpet bombing which happened during the invasion of Berlin, or with the Germans with London, bombarding the hell out of London. This didn't happen, and Russia has the resources and the power to do this, and we don't want to see this. So this kind of thing, you don't want to see it happening.
I think most people don't want to see this, but unfortunately, the narrative that's being perpetrated by the media here and by the Biden administration is this heroic struggle of the people of Ukraine, and they're making Zelensky out to be this heroic figure, propping him up still. And the tragedy is that the outcome looks very grim, because they've put Zelensky into yet another corner. Is he going to not hold on to this heroic view of himself? Is he going to succumb to Russia, which is the only solution, unfortunately, now in terms of saving himself and saving his country? So I think it's a horrible position that the United States has, and NATO and Europe have put him in. He doesn't have a lot of good options. A lot of Ukrainians are dying and are, being made refugees. And I keep coming back to this, Jamal. The United States miscalculated Putin yet again. I have, the other news here is that they're not stopping him. They're just not going to stop Putin.
Look, Zelensky made 2 major addresses recently, and he's been appealing every day. Not only him, but
right.
I've been seeing Ukrainian parliamentarians
right.
and citizens, appealing to the world. And he had a standing ovation talking to the U.S. Congress, and a lot of promises of sending weapons and money and
right.
so forth.
Right.
But without major military intervention and without having an air force or an air cover,
it's not going to change.
Nothing's going to change. It's just going to prolong the war. And then recently he had another appeal. I mean, the only 2 countries where he had direct appeal to the U.S. Congress right here in the United States, and then the Israeli Parliament or the Israeli Knesset the other day. And then he's again going to the Israeli Knesset and asking for the Iron Dome and other weapons, and why they have not helped him. And by the way, of course, talking about what's happening in the Ukraine is akin to what happened during the Holocaust. And this, even from someone like the Israeli Prime Minister Bennett, he said that no way, you cannot make this comparison to the Holocaust, and that's not the same thing. I mean, even Bennett has to say to kind of put the brake on this comparison. You're not going to draw us in. This is not a Holocaust that's going on. But what really kind of, and we talked about this, kind of taken me aback with this Zelensky. He's been reaching out to an apartheid state like Israel to mediate between Ukraine and Russia. And then the other thing is, in his address, because I kind of like paid attention to it word by word, saying something like, your struggle is similar to our struggle. I mean, here, Israel, an occupying power.
It's so bogus. I'm sorry, Zelensky.
And
I'm sorry to the Ukrainian people.
And putting well, that's the thing. I mean, and putting, he's appealing and he's saying, your struggle is similar to our struggle. Like, again, an occupying power, an apartheid state that keeps Palestinians, millions of Palestinians under its boots, basically, for decades. And he's saying that's the same thing like Russia invading our country. I think, like I said, we have a lot of sympathy towards the Ukrainian people, but he's not going to draw my sympathy with this kind of comparison and nonsense.
But not only will he not draw our sympathy, but apparently he won't even draw the sympathy of the apartheid leaders themselves, because they see it as a bogus comparison. Not for the same reason we do, obviously, but they see it as a bogus comparison. I mean, the fact that the media refuses to have a critical analysis of Zelensky, Jamal, and a critical analysis of what's happening in Ukraine right now is going to cause more harm, death, destruction to Ukrainians, because it's putting the United States more in it in a way that makes it unwinnable. So, and here's the other breaking news for Zelensky, Jamal. If the Israelis, if the apartheid leadership had to decide between Ukraine, Zelensky, and Russia, and the oligarchs, by the way, guess where they're going to put their money and emphasis? They're going to support Putin and the oligarchs. In fact, there are probably 12 to 13 Russian oligarchs who are trying to, or already in the apartheid state, avoiding or trying to avoid, the sanctions that have been put on by the United States and the EU. So Zelensky's got it all wrong in terms of his calculation, in terms of the sympathies of the apartheid regime. They're, if you put Naftali Bennett, and made him decide, he'd saddle up to Putin much more quickly than he would saddle up with Zelensky. So I think, Zelensky's made so many missteps, and it's going to cause his people and his country so much harm and misery. It's really tragic, Jamal.
Well, that's why I said initially he has been misled, but he's accepting to being misled. He has appealed to the United States, and President Biden made it clear that Americans are not going to get involved in this war. You're not going to put boots on the ground. You're not going to fly.
Right, but that's like giving a Putin a green light, Jamal. What basically NATO and Biden are saying to Putin: do whatever you want. We're not going to institute a no-fly zone. We're not going to defend. And you said it before, and it's absolutely true. Without an air force and an air military presence there's no way they can stop the Russians. There's just no way they can do it.
Well, it seems like we're going to keep talking about this next week as well, because I don't see this settling anytime soon unless Zelensky basically says, I'm going to accept the Russian demands. Because now he's saying, let's sit down and talk, and actually Russia has been ignoring him.
Yeah,
because they see him running to the Israelis, and they see him running here and there and being rejected, basically. And so they're in no hurry to sit down
That's
on
right.
the table.
They see him as weak. They see him as very weak. And, we'll get into the media analysis in the future, but I'm actually quite angry at the media for a lot of reasons. The misrepresentations, Jamal, but also this kind of perverse, and I alluded to this kind of perversity of putting the faces and the mothers and the children of Ukraine who are suffering, constantly on the news, and then letting them just suffer and then getting their interview and walking away. Think is.
Look, not to mention all the advocacy that we are seeing.
Right.
Instead of reporting just on the news, just having this, like once in a while, like actually this interview that I saw on CNN International, not the local CNN, where an American retired lieutenant colonel expert who said, I urge every Western leader, starting with President Biden, don't listen to Zelensky. No way that we should allow this war to spill beyond the borders of Ukraine. 100%. We cannot afford a World War III, and Zelensky should have accepted the offer back in February, and we would not have been. And the interviewer basically was surprised by his answer and was saying, even though she said well, maybe you're saying something correct, but don't you think this is callous? And he said, what are you talking about? I mean, we have to speak the truth. It's not callous
But
towards the Ukrainian. It's just saying, don't expect any direct help
but
from Europe or from the United States.
right, but Jamal, what's more callous? Giving the Ukrainians a false sense of hope and letting tens of thousands die, have a country be decimated, over 4 million refugees, which is what has happened since February 19th, Jamal. So if he had accepted the offer and dealt with the really tragic consequences of becoming a Russian satellite state, that still would have saved his country from it being destroyed. It would have saved 4 million refugees from leaving, and they could have had a different calculation. But, that's unfortunately, what happens when you become a little delusional.
Yes. The other story, which is because now all eyes are on the Ukraine, just a small report, even though actually like AOC from Congress and others mentioned it just, and this is the big thing, that AIPAC now, with its back against the wall, is trying to defend that
The steel.
the steel, not only the steel, that they have endorsed dozens of Republicans who have endorsed the big lie that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. And some of them, they've actually voted against certifying the 2020 elections as member
That's
of
right.
Congress. So they've been caught through these communications where basically what they have done. And then now they're coming, trying to defend their position, saying, well, at the end of the day, we are a one item or one cause organization is to protect Israel, etc., etc. And as long as these congressmen and congresswomen support Israel, we don't care about where they stand.
So as long as they protect Israel, but are racist, Islamophobic, white supremacists, we're okay with that, as long as they're willing to protect, an occupying apartheid state. Well, AOC called it out. We'll see if anybody else has any courage to stand up and to say the same thing. I mean, I saw some of the people that they're endorsing, Jamal. It would be kind to call them white supremacists. These
Well, they've
people,
endorsed amongst the list Ohio Representative Jim Jordan, Texas Representative Ronnie Jackson, by the way, the former White House physician who says Trump won the 2020 election, Pennsylvania Representative Scott Perry, who compared Democrats to Nazis, okay?
right,
New York Representative Elise Stefanik,
from New York, right.
from New York, she pushed racist anti-Semitic replacement theory, if you remember that,
I
with
do.
her ads on Facebook, with an image of immigrants coming across the border, reflected in President Joe Biden's aviator sunglasses. I mean, and the list goes on. We're not talking about one or two.
Well, people, this is, and the thing is, and this is why we bring it up, Jamal, they're not even hiding it. They're basically saying, we'll support any racist, white supremacist, Islamophobe. We'll give you money. We'll want you to be in Congress as long as you support an apartheid regime. That's basically what we're up against. And I don't know if the American public really is paying attention to this. Obviously, they're not.
Well, my question to the State Department, because it has the authority,
Right.
is when will it ask AIPAC to register as a foreign
agent? Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I don't think they're going to do it, but this is a question that we need to keep pressing. They're acting as a foreign agent. This is not just, they're basically saying we'll go against the Constitution of the United States if it supports, if it supports the state of Israel. It's unbelievable.
You're listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco, 89.5 FM. Let's go to this interview. We've talked about this topic, just like you'll think this is almost another topic that
but it's not going away, Jamal.
It's not going to go away. It's not going to change.
It's not going away. It's not.
And now, which is very important, again, and we talked about this, is about the virtual open classroom that was co-organized by Professor Rabab Abdulhadi, founding director of the Ahmed at San Francisco State University, and also her co-organizer, Professor Tomomi Kinukawa. Dr. Rabab Abdulhadi had a hearing, Senate hearing. She basically, the Senate sided with her.
Right, academic Senate, right.
San Francisco State University president vetoed that, went to arbitration. Also another panel sided with Dr. Rabab Abdulhadi. Now there is another new hearing for Dr. Tomomi Kinukawa, who's from the another department, not Ahmed, from the Women and Gender Studies department, facing the same issue and the same harassment and the same attack. Yet San Francisco State University just refuses to acknowledge that or defend them.
Jamal, they're doubling down, man. They're doing the Trump, they're doing the AIPAC thing. They are doubling down. They're in the same delusional space, I would say, as Zelensky. I mean, we'll come back at this after this really good interview that you did, but they're doubling down in a very destructive way, I think, San Francisco State leadership.
So here is Professors Kinukawa and Abdulhadi. On September 23rd, 2020, San Francisco State University administrators collaborated with corporate tech giants such as Zoom, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to shut down a virtual open classroom entitled Whose Narratives, Gender, Justice, and Resistance, a Conversation with Layla Khalid. This virtual open classroom was co-organized by Professor Rabab Abdulhadi, founding director of the Arab and Muslim Ethnicities and Diaspora Studies program, Ahmed, and Professor Tomomi Kinukawa, lecturer in the Women and Gender Studies department. San Francisco State University President Lynn Mahoney initially issued a statement saying that the university does not believe that the class panel discussion violates Zoom's terms of service or the law, but then she backtracked by saying that Zoom is a private company and it had the right to set its own terms of service. Hence, the university did not take any action to defend its faculty and protect both professors' academic freedom, nor did it provide an alternative platform for the panel to go on. Joining us to discuss this and more, Professors Abdulhadi and Kinukawa. Welcome to Arab Talk, professors.
Thank you for having me, Jamil. It's always a pleasure to be back with you.
So let me start with Dr. Kinukawa. You also submitted, because the reason I'm saying this, and I know our audience here is familiar with the case. We've had Dr. Abdulhadi several times, and this is like an ongoing saga. Like, I wake up hoping that this will be settled. It hasn't been settled. And Dr. Kinukawa, you've submitted a separate grievance in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement between the university management and the union. And last week, you started the hearing, and you were telling me before the show it got adjourned. But anyway, what were you trying to achieve with also having a parallel hearing?
Yes, thank you so much. So I submitted my grievance, which in the content is the identical with Dr. Abdulhadi's grievance. It's partly because in the grievance process, because of individualism in that system, they don't allow us to do a collective grievance. So in order to protect my own academic freedom, I needed to do my grievance. But also because the Dr. Abdulhadi's grievance, like for her grievance, as I think you had a like Dr. Abdulhadi and Dr. I mean her representative. Sorry, so the Dr. Abdulhadi's case, like the faculty hearing panel, wrote in favor of Dr. Abdulhadi. And but however, after that, President Mahoney vetoed the faculty panel's decision, which said that the university did violate the academic freedom of both of us. And also they said that university let the private corporation and also Zionist organization, Lawfare Project, to censor our classroom. And but then because President Mahoney rejected the decision, our academic freedom is still being violated as we speak. And so we wanted to push the case further.
So let me ask, as a lecturer in the Women and Gender Studies department, prior to your collaboration with Dr. Abdulhadi, or prior to being involved in a discussion about basically Palestine, were you subjected to any censorship or violation to your academic freedom by the administrators at San Francisco State University? I mean, did you experience any discrimination prior to this event?
Prior to this event, I don't believe that the administration intervened my teaching directly. I'm not even sure if they knew what I was teaching prior to my collaboration with Dr. Abdulhadi. So that was the first time. I was teaching, I teach women like an introductory feminist studies course, and I have been using Dr. Abdulhadi's really definitive work about Palestine, Arab, and Muslim feminism, and also transnational feminism and feminism in general. I have been using her work for years, like over 15 years in my syllabus, and then I had an honor to invite her in spring 2020 to my course, and Dr. Abdulhadi graciously accepted my offer, but then my invitation, but then she also proposed to co-organize the open classrooms, and that's how our collaboration started. And then one of the open classrooms that we co-organized got silenced. And so that was the first time actually I heard from the administration. And also in addition to what you already mentioned, the prior to the open classroom, the first we heard that the Lawfare Project sent a letter to Department of Justice saying that our classroom violates the anti-terrorist law like that and counts as a material support for terrorism. And then after that, the Zoom was threatening to cancel the course under the pressure of Zionists. And then the Provost Jennifer Summit emailed us prior to the open classroom, and and told us that our class might violate laws, and we better find our own lawyers and protect ourselves. And so that without any kind of, at that point, any evidence, like any counsel with their lawyers, but she just told us what she was taught by what she called outside individuals and organizations. And then so it was, we were very, I was very scared, like the worrying about the possible imprisonment, or like Provost Summit mentioned that we might get imprisoned because of that. And
wow,
so,
she even said that you might be imprisoned. That's basically for academic speech, really, or academic freedom. So specifically, you were targeted because you got involved and you came on the radar because of this panel and because the issue is about Palestine. Let me just remind our viewers and listeners that, and this is something you can expand on, Dr. Abdulhadi, that the two panels, the first panel, right, they said they basically rendered a decision asking the university to issue a public apology for you for failing to uphold your academic freedom, issue a letter voicing support for the program and faculty members' academic freedom, and provide a platform for rescheduling the original. The President Mahoney vetoed this. Then this went to arbitration. And again, a new panel in arbitration also sided with your case. And now what's next?
Thank you, Jamal. I want to just add to what my colleague, Professor Tomomi Kinukawa, said, that Professor Kinukawa has been involved in teaching and supporting Palestine for a while, but because this came on the radar of the Zionists, and because the Zionist groups noticed it, and because the Zionist groups say that there is no way there's going to allow anybody to speak about Palestine and speak about the truth about what's going on. As you know, now we are facing several exposures of Israel, and Israel is having a very serious PR problem, given that now at least 3 major human rights organizations, Amnesty International, the latest, before that Human Rights Watch, and before that it is Israel's own B'Tselem, have actually confirmed what Palestinians have been saying all along, that this is conditions of apartheid, and not only Palestinians, our also sisters, brothers, comrades in South Africa. Today is the anniversary of the Sharpeville massacre. So we also honor the martyrs there, and there is a very strong struggle. Israel is having a very serious problem. So Israel's supporters in the US, like the World Lawfare Project, AMCHA, Stand With Us, Anti-Defamation League, Zionist Organization of America, AIPAC, the various Israel lobby groups, wanted to completely shut us down. So what they did is they went all out. And the problem is that our own university actually, it's not only that they did not do anything, actually they contributed. They were very much complicit in shutting us down and violating our academic freedom. This is why the faculty hearing panel, the first one that was convened on September 30th, ruled unanimously, demanding that the university apologize to us. And part of the reason for that is because the university argued in its case that we were not harmed, that neither me nor Professor Tomomi Kinukawa were harmed, that we weren't harmed because actually who was harmed was Layla Khalid because she wasn't allowed to speak. And we were saying that actually Layla Khalid speaks on Zoom, and she had an event a week afterwards. What the Zionists were trying to do is prevent this becoming a legitimate subject of study and curriculum within the university. I mean, this is really very, very much part of and parcel of what the Zionists have been trying to shut down academic voices, students, faculty, try to prevent younger people from learning about the truth about Palestine, the truth about Zionist narratives that have been trying to continue making it consensus in the US and so on, because the tide has turned. And so the panel decided that they should apologize to us for the harm that they caused us. And if we want to talk about the harm, I don't think we even have enough time in one episode to discuss it, what happened to us. The fact that we had for 2 months to look for lawyers to say that we did not engage in material support for terrorism, that we were not going to be thrown in prison, that we had to go and fend for ourselves, find our own lawyers when the university is supposed to have protected us, and the fact that the panel should be, again, immediately done. And it is now over almost 2 years, and the panel has not been organized. Instead, President Mahoney comes and actually argues that the university has not been responsible just because she said, oh, I support academic freedom. So I want to always ask that how come she speaks about that, but her deeds and the deeds of the university contradict that. The deeds of the university, she herself, President Mahoney herself, in her file, she made 3 statements, one on September 5th, one on September 14th, one on September 23rd, and on September 23rd, she participated in the rally organized by Hillel, by the Israeli government, a foreign government, and by Anti-Defamation League and Jewish Community Relations Council to actually argue against us. On the same day we were silenced, she did two things. One, she said that Zoom has the right to its private terms and so on, as if San Francisco State and California State University does not have a contract with Zoom. I mean, Zoom charges the university millions of dollars to make it the platform on which we can teach and study and present and have our open classrooms and so on. So San Francisco State is not, the University of San Francisco State is not issuing a neutral decision about Zoom. San Francisco State and CSU actually could have argued with Zoom and say to them, look, we want to renegotiate the contract because you're intervening in the content of our classrooms. You are trying to tell our faculty what to teach in their classroom. This is a violation of academic freedom. This is violation of freedom of speech. They didn't do that. President Mahoney also, her participation with the Zionist groups on the same day when we were silenced was also a proof that the university is not even neutral. So, I mean, the university
Well,
says,
here, let's talk about neutrality, because you've mentioned these human rights organizations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, B'Tselem, there are others also, who pretty much certify that Israel practices apartheid. So what's the position? Because now, I mean, we can ask the question, and this is very important because this is where debate should happen on campuses and in academia. What's the position of San Francisco State University on Israeli apartheid? What's the position of President Mahoney, since now 3 major organizations have certified Israel as an apartheid state? Has this question been put in, to her?
Yes, so I mean, the thing is, Jamal, is that there is silence. We have not heard a single word.
Silence is complicity. We know silence is complicity.
I'm coming to that.
And
coming to that.
I mean,
not only silence, but but there is silence on the base of it. There is silence. On the base of it is that we should be, maybe Professor Kinukawa will speak about the second panel that we tried to do with UC Merced that was shut down, that was actually boomerang from the decision of President Mahoney. But for San Francisco State, what San Francisco State has done, so we were silenced, we were shut down on September 23rd. The president of San Francisco State continued around the clock to meet with members of Hillel, student Hillel, which is anti-Palestinian, Hillel, San Francisco Hillel, with other groups, as she herself has admitted, published an op-ed in J Weekly, which is the newsletter of the Jewish Community Relations Council, in which, interestingly, she took out 2 words that she had in her statement to campus about Islamophobia and anti-Blackness, and only kept anti-Semitism, which is really a truly insult to the diversity of the Jewish communities, I would say, that for the majority of the Jews, or at least an increasing numbers, it is Zionism and Israel do not represent what they stand for, and so on. And President Mahoney did not reach out, neither to me nor Professor Kinukawa, to ask us. Professor Mahoney prides herself on being a scholar of feminism, a scholar of white nationalism. So we would have at least expected her. And Provost Summit is a professor of medieval studies and also labels herself as a feminist. Neither of them, 2 women at the helm of the university, did not reach to us, 2 feminist queer scholars who actually were studying something about gender justice and resistance, to ask us, come and let's have a conversation. Let's understand. Okay, you may be opposed to what you are saying, what we're saying. Come and ask us. Let's have a conversation. But did not reach out to us while they were around the clock meeting with Zionist groups and continuing. The last thing I would say now in this here is that a few months ago, San Francisco State announced an official agreement signed by the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, which, by the way, co-sponsored the Zionist rally on September 23rd, did not reach out to us, co-sponsored the Zionist rally, as well as the head of the advancement, the fundraising for the university, the vice president of the university, both of them announced an agreement with Hillel International, and the Academic Engagement Network, which is a network that was set up by Mark Yudof, the former chancellor of UC, who was well known for his Islamophobia, anti-Palestinianness, support for Israel, and now is headed by a professor at Syracuse University who are constantly, day in and day out, attacking everybody from Columbia University to us. If you remember, Jamal, they also targeted me because I received the AUP award, the Association of American University Professors. And they actually threatened AAUP that they might lose their funding if they continue to rescind. I should, by the way, say that not a single member of the university administration, not a single one, emailed me to congratulate me for winning this prestigious award. And it was only left to our union, amazing union, California Faculty Association, to pass a resolution to congratulate me when all the other institutions hail and celebrate their faculty when they win any awards. So in this sense, San Francisco State is not only not neutral, San Francisco State actually is either at the worst part in 2002, when the task force, the community task force was founded, on which you sat and other people have sat, or worse than that, because at that time we didn't even have a program. Now we have a program, we are teaching, the program has been vetted, has been approved at the highest levels, and they have spent every single ounce in their power to dismantle the program and shut it down.
What I'm saying here, though, that the narrative has changed. Again, I go back to the apartheid issue. If San Francisco State University is collaborating with organizations that basically stand for an apartheid regime, because that's what you're saying, they are collaborating with organizations. But now Israel, even this debate is not absent from the US Congress. You have members of Congress who recognize that Israel is an apartheid state. You have parliaments in Europe who recognize that Israel is an apartheid state. So if San Francisco State University is still, and President Mahoney, defending Israel, they are collaborating with an apartheid state. Would this have happened when there was a campaign to boycott apartheid South Africa? That's my question is.
I think San Francisco State was also a little bit delayed in coming on board, but they did. But I will give you a more recent example. San Francisco State came out with a terrible statement after the COVID virus spread, which was anti-Asian. And our colleagues in the Asian American Studies Department confronted the university, and Mahoney apologized. President Mahoney apologized, and the university issued a different statement. And this was the power of the Asian American Studies colleagues, the Asian American community, and all of us who stood by our colleagues and so on. We were wondering, Professor Kinukawa and I, and all our supporters, and everybody who's working with us, what is it that will take for San Francisco State to admit? I mean, even Biden, when he met with Rashida Tlaib on the tarmac in Dearborn, he asked her, how is your family doing in Palestine? I mean, everybody recognizes that, whether even the US government is not going, of course, and the US government will be the last one to say that Israel is an apartheid state, the same way that they did with apartheid South Africa. But you expect the president of the university, a well-learned intellectual and scholar, who understands, who teaches and learns about feminism, and who teaches and learns about white supremacy, who knows what has been going on, who has all the evidence, with whom I've met on several occasions. Actually, San Francisco State University President Mahoney was appointed at the same time that I had received that death threat. You remember, Jamal, the one in which the guy says, I'm a New York City retired detective, I wouldn't advocate violence, but watch out if you cross the street or you engage in an argument and so on. And I actually went and met with her, with the president of the union and the dean of the associate dean of equity. And I spoke to her and she said, yes, we should be doing something. We should be doing something about Ahmed. We will make support and so on and so forth. And here we are. That was 2019.
So who's making the decisions, in your opinion? I mean, we know there is a lot of external pressure on the administration, and I mean by the Israel lobby, and that's what I call it, just under this whole umbrella, different groups, whether it's JCRC or ADL, etc. And I don't want to even get into the latest thing about AIPAC, which has been supporting now neocon Republicans who rejected the findings of the elections. But anyway, that's a different topic. So is the tail wagging the dog?
Yes, I mean, it's very, very clear that San Francisco State University is not acting in the best interest of its mandate as a public university that's accountable to the public, that is supposed to teach the children of the state of California and other children publicly, that is supposed to actually have a neutral, at the very least, a neutral position, that San Francisco State also prides itself that it stands for social justice. If San Francisco State did not say we stand for social justice, it would be another matter.
So we have few minutes left, Dr. Abdulhadi. I don't know if you feel comfortable talking, but you also have a pending lawsuit against the university. And my understanding is there's some weird settlement that they tried to propose, which basically tells you that if they settled with you, that you have to tell the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission that you did not suffer from discrimination. I mean, they're asking you basically to lie about what happened to you.
Well, let me just preface it by saying that the second grievance that I had, which was over the Ahmed program and the breach of contract, when they bait and switched me, they basically lured me in, and basically took away the 2 faculty lines, and we all have been struggling to reinstate the 2 faculty lines since 2009, when Corrigan canceled them because he was upset over a speaker at the Palestinian mural anniversary, if you remember. And so the faculty panel also, again, unanimously ruled that the university harmed me, that there was a hostile work environment that the university has created, and that they should apologize, and they immediately should hire the 2 faculty lines at not only assistant professor now, at the associate or full professor lines, in order for us to be able to have a program. Because if we had hired them in 2015, today we will be able to have, at least we would have the department that they lured me to come and build in the first place. And so in the process of it, I sued the university in federal and state court. There has been a ruling in the state court. The judge has ruled against me in federal court, but we are appealing actually to a higher court. We already filed the appeal. And in the state court, the case is going on. The university, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be talking about this, but I am going to talk about it anyway, because I think this is kind of like the public opinion. The university offered me a settlement. Basically, the university wants me out. For them, it's really, really important to get rid of Rabab Abdulhadi. This was seen to be, they don't want to build the Ahmed Studies program. They don't want to address all my grievances. They don't want to address the discrimination that has been going on against me. So they offered me a settlement with an amount of money but they also asked me, and I said, okay, certain things that I was talking with my lawyer, it's fine if you are promising to build the Ahmed Studies program. If you feel that I'm the obstacle to building Ahmed Studies program, okay, I'll step away, build the Ahmed Studies program. However, this seemed not to be the case, because what they really wanted to do is basically crush me completely. They want me to resign ASAP as of August. They want me to give up my right, which is part of my collective bargaining agreement, which is called Faculty Early Retirement Program, by which I would be able to work for 5 more years for half of the salary after I retire, which is a supplementary thing that is really bread and butter issue, that I can actually do it until I'm able at an age where I can collect Social Security. And they said, no, they're not going to accept that. And I said, okay, so why don't you buy out my FERPing? Go ahead and buy it out. They said, no, they don't want to. And they were trying to settle. We're supposed to, if they want to settle, they want to settle the 2 lawsuits. Now they want to also settle all the grievances, because they are so worried about the grievances that are going on today at the university, which we won 2 grievances. Professor Kinukawa will win their grievance. We had to adjourn because the university representative's father has passed away. Right, she heard right while we were there. So we adjourned, and we will continue in a couple of weeks to do that. We're confident that Professor Kinukawa will win their grievance. And the university is very afraid, because they don't want to be caught with eggs on their face in public. This is really the issue. And for them, they would like to get rid of me in order to also teach a lesson to everybody else. This is the chilling effect of McCarthyism. You deprive people of their livelihood. You make their life hellish. You create a hostile work environment. You cancel their classes. You refuse them disability accommodation. You do not defend them when they are being trashed and smeared and bullied and harassed harassed and threatened on campus and so on, and you think that they're going to go away because your main group that you are accountable to is your donors, who tend to be right-wingers and Zionists, and your Zionist allies. This is really what the situation is. What I am saying to everybody is that I am going to stay in the classroom, teach until the day I die. I'm going to die standing in the classroom to teach. San Francisco State would like me to go out in order for them. They need to come up with conditions to build the Ahmed Studies program. This is a demand not only for me. This is not just a violation of my contract. This is a demand for all our communities of justice. And I'm not just talking Arabs, Muslims, and Palestinians. I'm talking about people like Professor Kinukawa. I'm talking about our Jewish anti-Zionist friends who are working with us. I'm talking about the union. I'm talking about the women. I'm talking about the work. I'm talking about the San Francisco Labor Council that unanimously voted in favor of a resolution that ordered President Mahoney to cut out these shenanigans and get down to the business of justice and do what is right and stop violating our rights. This is what's going on.
So the battle continues. You're not giving up. We'd like to talk to you again. We're running out of time, and I want to thank you both, Professor Kinukawa and Professor Rabab Abdulhadi, and we'll continue the conversation hopefully soon. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM. Go to our website, arabtalkradio.com, to download our latest episodes, and we will talk to you next week.
See you next week.